Hello, everybody. How are you? Roop! There it is. It is so good to be a part of TEDx 2022 here in Detroit, isn't it? Wonderful. I'm Roop Raj. Good to be with you today.
And I'm Huel Perkins, and I'm only here because he wanted me to be here. But I would do it anyway because this is a wonderful, wonderful event, and Reverend Charlie is a wonderful host, let me tell you. But I'm Huel Perkins, and I am here with Roop to tell you a wonderful story that begins with hope and ends with pure joy. And in between the start and the finish, we have what we call a decades-long period of mentorship. Now, when you hear that word, you think it's what the old guy, or maybe I should say the mature guy, gets to tell the young guy. But really, it's about what we learn from each other at each stage of our lives and our careers. Now, I believe that all success, every great achievement, begins with desire. What do you want? What are you willing to do ethically, honestly, morally? What are you willing to learn? What skills are you willing to acquire to achieve the kind of life you want for yourself? The minute I met Roop Raj, I could tell that his desire to become a broadcast journalist was strong, although he was just a teenager.
I was only 14 years old when I first met Huel Perkins. He has changed hardly at all, except for his hair has gotten a lot grayer, because of me, likely. And I finally don't look like I'm 14 anymore, which is a good thing. But I gotta tell you something, the story that begins behind us in 1991 is one of desire, but it's one of mentorship. And I gotta tell you something, I was 14 years old, I looked around and I didn't see any Indian Americans that looked like me, that were on television, that were doing the news. I wanted so badly to become a television newscaster that I started my own show in Troy, Michigan that was very well watched on municipal access. So many people watched it, it broke cable boxes in Troy. It was incredible. But at age 14, I knew that I wanted to do this. I did not have anyone who looked like me that appeared anywhere in front of me. And so I continued to do a show. Now, listen, I gotta tell you, I think the ratings fell drastically because I believe that this tie prevented progress. I thought that Huel Perkins' loud, awesome ties could be duplicated. They could not. And certainly I could not duplicate what Huel was doing, and I never wanted to. I wanted to be my own person, my own television reporter and anchor. And then finally, in 1991, I met Huel Perkins, and he became a face that I recognized because mentorships, my friends, it's about mutual understanding. It's about feeling close enough with somebody that you can be vulnerable and ask for help, and that's who Huel was to me.
Let me tell you, I knew that Roop was talented, intelligent, inquisitive, but I wasn't sure that was enough. You see, in the great race of life, we all want to win, but the truth is, we all don't begin at the same starting line. Now, for instance, if you had been born a prince or princess, if your mother or father happened to die, you would become the king or queen automatically. Not based on anything you've done or achieved or created. You would win the top prize and all the money that goes with it simply because you were born. Well, hip, hip, hooray, I have nothing against those who wear the crown. But for the rest of us, life is a lot different. A hell of a lot different. In fact, when I was born, this is my birth certificate, 67 years ago, in the colored ward of Baton Rouge General Hospital, my mother, a school teacher, was segregated from the other patients. My father, a college professor, couldn't even go through the front doors of the hospital to see his newborn son. And I was confronted for most of my early life by signs that said, colored here, use the balcony, separate restrooms, separate waiting rooms, separate drinking fountains, separate everything. I couldn't go to the school right down the block. I couldn't check out a book from the city library. That was the law in Louisiana when I was a kid. But I was so blessed, extremely blessed, because I had a mother and father who made sure I had a book in my hands and something positive on my mind every day of my life. I never felt less than anyone. And thank God, the civil rights leaders like Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers, and Viola Liuzzo a Detroit mother of 5 who went down to Alabama to try to help black people vote and was murdered by the Klan, and countless others who lost their lives but who stood up and marched and spoke out so this country would live up to its ideals. And the doors closed finally started to open, allowing my generation to go through, head held high and ready for anything. But surprisingly, even decades later, Roop would face similar challenges based on his complexion, his name, and his faith.
It is on the shoulders of greatness that humility and the next generation can move forward with. And it is because of Huel's work, because of his parents, because of everything that I'd learned that Huel had been through, that I knew, even at an early age, Huel Perkins, my mentor, had gone through all of those things. I didn't know, growing up in Troy, Michigan, that I would face some of the similar sentiments when I went out to Southeast Louisiana. New Orleans is a great city filled with wonderful people. But there are people in parts of Louisiana that are not exposed to other people who look like this. My mom, my dad, my brother, and myself. I was so blessed to have mom and dad and my brother who all supported me when I was going into television. They said to me, "You can do this." And I used to tell my mom and dad, there's no one on television who's an Indian man. Plenty of Indian women on TV. White news directors and general managers would hire Indian women, but they wouldn't hire Indian men. They were not considered to be people in positions of power. They're the doers, they're the behind-the-scenes people. They are not the people who host events and who show up on the stage. I believe that we all deserve a seat at the table. And the seat at the table right now is that anchor chair where we get to deliver the news every single evening. And I saw Huel each and every night, knew about his struggles, and went to Southeast Louisiana at the age of 25 as a morning anchor, 6 months after 9/11. And 6 months after 9/11, people started talking. Advertisers started pulling their ads away from our television program in the morning on NBC in New Orleans because they didn't like who this guy was. They would write in the paper and say, "Who is this guy?" I remember one quote that I will never forget. Literally, someone said, "Where did they find this guy? From the axis of evil?" I grew up in Troy. I grew up in Troy and didn't experience any of what I faced when I went there. At Troy High School, it was the United Nations. I was shocked when I moved elsewhere and didn't know that everyone didn't know people of different cultures, races, and religions. But what I learned was through the struggles that I had learned from my mentor. If he had gone through what he went through, if he wasn't able to check out a library book, use a drinking fountain, go to the bathroom in the same bathroom as other people, then who was I to complain, but instead to work even harder and be the best I could be? And it was a special journey. Huel and I continued our friendship and our mentorship through my years in his home state of Louisiana.
Well, to paraphrase a line from Star Wars, I am not your father, Roop. But I can tell you that his father and I had many discussions over the years about his career, where to go, how to do it, the next steps to take. And there were periods of doubt and discomfort, but he overcame them. And I remember going to visit him in 2003 at his station in New Orleans and talking to him and reminding him of what I told him back then and what I still tell him today. Simply commit yourself to the truth, no matter how difficult it is to convey. Make sure you always do your best, not only when the camera is on, but when the camera is off. Find a way to connect to the people you serve, and that means allowing everybody in, inviting everybody to talk with you, meet with you, the people who like you and the people who don't, because you learn from both. And try to learn something about everything. Make your knowledge broad and deep. And when given the chance, try to be the voice of reason and reassurance in the middle of the storm.
Little did I know that that storm would be called Hurricane Katrina in 2005, again in the home state of Huel Perkins and his wife Priscilla, my wife Julie. They all come from Louisiana. This is a great state and a wonderful place. It was devastating that a great American city could be entrenched in such a terrible storm and not receive help from anybody. The federal, the state, the local leaders failed at every level. We left our television station and went instead to a garage to broadcast for 18 hours at a time every single day, taking turns, wearing the same dress shirt for days on end, as we try to tell people where the storm was coming. Mind you, this was before social media. People wanted to know where they could find their family members who had evacuated. They wanted to know whether or not their house was okay before Facebook. They wanted to know before Twitter where to go get gas and whether or not it was okay to come back to Southeast Louisiana, to New Orleans. It was in that time that I truly became a journalist. It was so critically important to tell people where to get food, water, and where to find their family. I will never forget, till this day, the importance of putting a microphone on, just like Huel and I have on now, and sitting in that chair. The information that we have is that critical that is changing someone's life. The global pandemic, the Oxford shooting, so many things we cover. Information is critical. To be honest and forthright, even through the storm, whether you're doing this from 2,000 feet above in a chopper looking at Southeast Louisiana, days after Hurricane Katrina, or you're talking about doing it after a terrible bankruptcy that took away so much of the spirit of Detroit, but of course it came back. I learned all of this going through the storm and understanding it through Huel and some of the things that we did. And we talked all the time. Even when I was in New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina, I would call him and say, look what happened. But I also called him when I told him I met a girl. And that girl is Julie, and she's with us here today. She's my favorite part of New Orleans. I still say that. She's my favorite part of New Orleans. In fact, Huel, people say, do you miss New Orleans? I said, I go home to New Orleans every night. I love it.
Well, just as Julie has been a big part of his success, my wife Priscilla, who is next to Julie, is in the audience as well. She's been a big part of my success. We couldn't do what we do without them. There's no question about it. You know, you asked if we're affected by the news we deliver to you. Yes, we are. And sometimes we even have to get counseling. But we do it because it's important. And I love when we all four get together and settle the problems of the world over dinner. But I mentor Roop and other people here in Detroit and around the country, not because I believe everybody can win, but because I believe everybody deserves a chance to run, a chance to try. And so when I retired a few months ago, I recommended Roop for the job. I didn't do it because I know him, because I've mentored him for several decades. It's because he is the best person for the job. And obviously I'm right.
Thank you.
So I know that some of you are asking, well, how do I replicate this mentorship relationship in my organization or business?
I don't think you can expressly. I think you have to foster an environment that allows these types of friendships to happen. You can't force mentorships like you can't force someone to love somebody. Mentorship is about finding something in common and trying to gather that commonality and teaching, a teaching moment. I was able in 2002, I got my phone rang, and it was a young man who was 14 years old who said, I want to go into television in Louisiana. 14 years old, it reminded me of me. I mentored him, and from that time on, he's now the general manager at the NBC station in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. It's about helping where you can and where you think you can be of service.
And I've been a mentee too. I've been taught by some of the best in the business. Sherry Margolis, my first co-anchor here when I arrived 32 years ago, and of course, Monica Gale, with whom I shared the anchor desk for 25 years. Murray Feldman, one of the best reporters in the business, and of course, the guy I call my big brother, Rich Fisher. A Detroit native who introduced me to everything and everyone in Detroit, the good, the bad, and the wonderfully wild. It was a fabulous learning experience, and sadly, when Rich died a few years ago, I told his family, there's a part of him in everything I do. Now, Roop is his own man. He is unique. But I hope when you watch him, you see a bit of his mother, his father, a bit of Murray, Sherry, Monica, Rich, and Huel in everything he does.
Thank you so much. Huel, as we wrap up today's talk on mentorship, we certainly hope that when you see this story unfold, it's not about Huel, it's not about Roop, it's about you and what you can do moving forward. Thank you for having both of us. Huel, an honor of a lifetime.
My friend, the best is yet to come.